All right, welcome back. So we're going to keep on moving along in chapter 4. We're going to look at lesson 4.2 today. So let me present my screen and we'll get started. Okay. So in lesson 4.2, we're going to look at adding, subtracting, and multiplying polynomials. The nice thing is a lot of today is going to be reviewed from Algebra 1. There's just a few new things I'll be showing you. All right, so to get started, we have special product pattern, sum and difference. So if we have two binomials where the terms are the same but the signs are different, that's going to factor to, that's going to multiply to a squared minus b squared. So you can see an example here. And if you just FOIL it like you normally would, x times x is x squared, x times 3 is negative 3x, 3 times x is positive 3x, 3 times negative 3 is negative 9, and then your middle terms cancel. Okay, that's why it's a special pattern, because the middle terms will always cancel, so you can just get the answer a little faster. Square of a binomial. So if you have a plus b squared, it is a pattern. However, we typically just write it out twice and then FOIL it. All right, but the pattern is that you square the first term, okay? To get the middle term, you multiply the a and the b together and then double it, and then you square the last term. So you can see the examples here, y squared, then multiply these together. 4 times y is 4y, double it to get 8y, and then square the last term to get 16. Okay, square the first term. So 2t squared is 4t squared. To get the middle term, you're going to multiply these together and double it. So when you multiply them together, you get negative 10t, and then double it to get negative 20t, and then square the last term. Negative 5 squared is a positive 25. All right, next, the cube of a binomial. This one you may not be familiar with. Again, we typically just write it as a plus b times a plus b times a plus b, and we FOIL the first two, and then we're left with a trinomial times a binomial, and we do a bunch of distributing, and that is fine. You probably aren't going to memorize this pattern, but if you want to, you cube the first term. To get the second term, you multiply the two terms together and then multiply by 3 and square the a. Then you're going to multiply these together, square the b, and multiply by 3, and then finally b cubed, okay? So again, I don't expect you to have this one memorized. We'll probably just multiply it all out, okay? So adding polynomials vertically, let me get that set up for us to get started. Okay, so the first problem, when you add polynomials vertically, you're just stacking them up. 3x cubed plus 2x squared minus x minus 7. Then we have x cubed minus 10x squared plus 8. Okay, stack them up, combining like terms, or lining up, I should say, like terms, and then add vertically. So you have 4x cubed, a positive 2 plus a negative 10 is a negative 8x squared. Negative x with nothing to add to it, so that stays negative x, and then negative 7 plus 8 is a positive 1. And that would be your answer there. All right. Adding horizontally, so we're going to write the first polynomial in parentheses. Then you're going to add the second polynomial. So write it down in parentheses. When you're adding, the parentheses are really not necessary, but it's good practice, a good habit, because when you're subtracting, the parentheses are super important. Now I'm going to rewrite the problem, just dropping all the parentheses. And finally, I'm going to look for like terms starting with the highest exponent. So the highest exponent is y cubed, and there are no other y cubed terms. Then I go to my y squares. A positive 3 and a negative 5 is a negative 2y squared. Then I go to my y term. So a negative 2 and a positive 1 is a negative 1y. And then finally, the constants, I have a 1 minus 4. So that's a positive 3. Right? So that's the answer there. So you can add vertically or horizontally. Okay, let's keep on moving along. Now subtracting vertically and horizontally. So we have 2x cubed plus 6x squared minus x plus 1. And we're going to subtract 8x cubed minus 3x squared minus 2x plus 9. Now, oftentimes I see students make mistakes when subtracting. So what you actually could do is turn this into an addition problem by adding the opposite of everything. So that means I'm going to turn this into addition, change this into a negative, change this into a positive, change this into a positive, and change this into a negative. Okay, so that's what I prefer doing, but that's kind of up to you. Now I just add my columns. So positive 2 and a negative 8, that adds to a negative 6x cubed. A positive 6 and a positive 3, that's a 9x squared. A negative 1 and a negative 1 and a positive 2, that's going to be a positive 1x. And a positive 1 and a negative 9 leaves you with a negative 8. So I like to change it into addition rather than subtraction. I find that students make less sign errors when you do it that way. All right, horizontally, here the parentheses are super important, and you'll see why once we have it written out. You're going to subtract 3z squared plus z minus 4 minus 2z squared plus 3z. Now, the reason the parentheses are super important is because you need to distribute the negative before dropping, or as I should say, as you drop the parentheses. So I'm going to drop the parentheses around the first polynomial, which does not change. The second polynomial becomes a negative 2z squared, and then a negative times a positive is a negative 3z. Then I go through and gather like terms. 3 minus 2 is a 1z squared. Z minus 3 is a negative 2z. And then I just have the one constant of negative 4. All right, let's keep on moving along. Nope. Scroll down. Okay, multiply the polynomials vertically and horizontally. So we'll multiply vertically, then we'll multiply horizontally. We are very used to multiplying horizontally, not so much vertically. Okay, so I'll show you how to set that up. All right, so to multiply vertically, you're going to write the trinomial first. The polynomial with more terms goes on top. And then you're going to multiply by x minus 3. So it's kind of like multiplication of numbers like we normally would. You're going to multiply these two together, then those two, then those two. Then you're going to multiply by x, x, and x, okay? So multiplying a negative 3 times a negative 4 is negative 12. Then a negative 3 times a positive 2x is a negative 6x. Then a negative 3 times a negative 3x squared is a positive 3x squared. Now I multiply everything by x and I write the product below. So x times 4 is a 4x. X times 2x, x times 2x is a 2x squared. It's positive 4x. And then an x times a negative x squared is a negative x cubed. And since the 2x squared was positive, I'll put a plus in between. Okay. And then this, I'm going to combine my columns. So nothing to add with the negative x cubed, so it just stays negative x cubed. Here I add to get a positive 5x squared. Now I'm going to add to get a negative 2x and then a negative 12. All right. For the next one, horizontally, we are very used to multiplying horizontally. So we have the binomial y plus 5 times the trinomial 3y squared minus 2y plus 2. I'm going to distribute a y to all three terms. And then I'll distribute a 5 to all three terms. And then I'll combine my like terms. So y times 3y squared is 3y to the third. Y times negative 2y is negative 2y squared. Y times 2 is a positive 2y. 5 times 3y squared is a positive 15y squared. 5 times negative 2y is a negative 10y. And 5 times 2 is a positive 10. Now combine like terms, look for your highest exponent to start, so 3y cubed. Now I move on to the y squared terms, a -2 and a +15 is a +13y squared. Then the y terms, so a +2 and a -10 gives you a -8y. And then finally, the lonely constant. Okay. So far, hopefully everything is review. Let's keep on moving along. Multiplying 3 binomials. So for this one, we're going to write it out x, oops, copied it down wrong. Try that again. X minus 1 times x plus 4 times x plus 4. So I'm going to multiply, I'm going to FOIL the first two to begin with, okay, and then I'll take care of the last one. So first I'm going to multiply x times x to get x squared, x times 4 to get a 4x, and -1 times x to get a -1x, and finally -1 times 4 to get a -4. That needs to all go in parentheses because you still have to multiply by x plus 4. Combine like terms before you move on. So I have x squared of +4 and a -1 is a +3x minus 4. And now I have to multiply by x plus 4. So we don't call it FOILing because it's not a binomial times a binomial, but you're just distributing. You're going to multiply everything through by the x. And then we'll go through and multiply everything through by the 4 in a second. So x times x squared is x cubed. X times 3x is a +3x squared. -4 times x is -4x. Now I have to multiply everything through by 4. So I have a +4x squared, a +12x, and a -16. Last step is to combine like terms. I only have one x cubed term. Then you move on to your x squares. That'll give me a +7x squared. Then I'll move on to my x terms. A -4 and a +12 gives you a +8x, and then -16. All right. Let's see which one is next. All right. Using special product patterns. All right, for this, we are going to FOIL the first one. Second one, we're going to write it out in FOIL. And third one, we're going to write out in FOIL. If you want to multiply using the patterns and the like tricks, you are welcome to. However, I know students generally don't memorize those, so I want to do them the way I know most students would. So the first one, we're going to FOIL. 4n times 4n is 16n squared. 4n times -5 is a -20n. +5 times 4n is a +20n. And +5 times -5 is a -25. The middle terms cancel, and you're just left with 16n squared minus 25. This is the different sums pattern where you just square the first term, square the last term, and it's a minus sign in between. But if you don't remember the pattern, just FOIL like I showed you. Okay. For the next one, when you have a binomial squared, the one thing you need to be careful of, and I see this all the time, you cannot just square the first term and square the second term. That's not going to work. You have to write it out as 9y minus 2 times 9y minus 2, and then you're going to FOIL. So 9y times 9y is 81y squared. 9y times -2 is a -18y. -2 times 9y is -18y. And -2 times -2 is a +4. Combined your like terms in the middle. So I have 81y squared minus a 36y plus 4. Okay. And the last one. Again, it's a binomial squared, so do not just square the first term and the last term. You have to write this out and FOIL. So AB times AB is A squared B squared. AB times 4 is a +4AB. 4 times AB is a +4AB. And 4 times 4 is a +16. Combined your like terms in the middle. So I have a squared b squared plus 8ab plus 16. All right. Okay, and that is it. Okay, so hopefully this was a easier lesson, being that most of it was all Algebra 1 skills. Go ahead and give or finish your notes and upload those for me, and I'll see you guys here for the next lesson. Bye.